So region locking still exists. Ping still exists. So you've actually just lied to me, is what's going on here. You've given somebody else from my country an opportunity to do something that you removed from me based on reasons that now you've basically given exception for somebody else, who is a new caster, by the way. And I'm someone that's doing Overwatch League.
Probably a good time to start moving into 2022. And to start that off, since we're talking about Valorant, I want to close the Valorant chapter in a sense, because I almost feel like that's where you are at now.
Right.
You have more or less stopped working Valorant as of mid-2022. So I wanted to know what were the reasons why. And I also wanted to bring up a little thing called region locking and ask whether or not that's involved.
The short answer is yes. This is a tricky subject because on some level, talking about this, I think about, well, what do I have to lose currently? Talking about this, I don't know that Riot would like me to talk about this. The problem is that they did do these things. So, look, there's a lot that I'm still not going to say because I'm not about burning bridges. There's still a lot of stuff that I'm not gonna share publicly, maybe ever. We'll see. If I fully exit esports forever and I don't intend on coming back, I'll fucking give you the manifesto. But right now, all I can say is, since you brought up the region locking, that's all I'll talk about in terms of the right stuff. In terms of the iceberg, we'll just talk about the ice on the top and none of the stuff below. Here's where I'll start. I thoroughly enjoy Valorant. I really like the game. I really like casting the game. I really like Valorant esports. I think it's a good game. I think it's a well-made game. I think it's obviously a pretty good esport that has a lot of viewership that people enjoy. The game itself is fantastic. I think also the esport is run well. I think the esport model, the franchising partnership model that Riot have is very exciting. I can't wait to see how they do it this year and how that moves forward and what kind of opportunities that creates. And hopefully that creates some good opportunities for the teams, because I'm all about, you want to have stable esports. The teams are the ones that need to gain the benefits so that they are the ones who are getting returns on the money they're spending, because they're the ones spending a fuck ton of money here. So I have a lot of positives to say about Valorant. I think the game is genuinely good. My relationship with working the esports kind of goes like this. I peaked doing VCT NA, didn't get to do Masters. It is what it is. I don't hold that against Riot. There's a lot of talented people in there. You compete against some of the most talented people when you do Valorant, because good talent from across all of esports come in. You're competing against CS casters, Rainbow Six casters, other Overwatch League casters,
PUBG.
PUBG, Fortnite, everything. You're arriving at the fucking Elite Four of casting.
Yep.
You're kind of arriving at, the world final of casting, where all the best casters from whatever game are coming in. Some not as good as others, but there's a lot of the really top ones in there. You got guys like DDK and Sean Gares and stuff early on. That's an interesting story as well for other people that are keen on finding more about that. That's not my story, but the article's there. So at some point in early 2021, there's essentially a conversation that begins forming that I'm informed of, that it pertains to region locking for casters. Now, what is region locking for casters? It essentially means that if you are native to North America, in terms of like you actually live there, you live in America, Canada, Mexico, whatever, or it's just generally speaking, it's just the United States, you do North American Valorant. If you live somewhere in Europe, you do European Valorant. If you don't live in any of those places, you do Valorant where you live. I live in Australia. And they wanted to take me off. They wanted to take me off North American Valorant because I did not live in North America. So here's what happened. That happened at the start of 2021, but if you go through my Wikipedia, you'll see that I still did a ton of Valorant in North American Valorant in 2021. So what happened is I have a conversation with the TO and Riot. Well, TO is the middleman here. I didn't get to speak directly to Riot. Sadly, I don't have that level of I don't have that level of like in with them, is what I'll say. The conversation basically goes, hey, look, Riot OC doesn't exist. It's gone. You've said in League of Legends, you've said in Riot Esports that OC is now part of NA, residency-wise. Players from, and this is at the time, I think they've taken that away, but this is at the time, in 2021, if you were an OCE League of Legends player, your residency is also for NA. So it doesn't take up, it doesn't take up an import slot. So I'm like, you've taken my region away. You've said that NA, you said that we're now part of NA. So how am I not part of NA? I'm part of NA. Am I not? Is that not correct? And so they're like, well, I guess.
I think you got him.
And I got him. I actually got him. I actually won. I won against the mega corpos just one time. And so I got to do NA Valorant for another year because I actually got him. But then comes 2022. And they take me off anyway. They're like, but we're going to take you off anyway. Fuck you. They didn't say that. But I don't want to sound bitter about it, even though it's not. It's a little unfortunate for me. I actually think it was end of 2020. So it wasn't even 2020. It was end of 2021. Because you'll start to see that at the end of 2021, now I've got a Valorant Oceania thing on there from September.
Yeah.
So somewhere between April and September, I had to switch to Oceania. And they basically came back after allowing me to do NA. They said, no, actually, we're going to stick firm and we're going to cuck you anyway. So I got cucked to Oceania, back to Australia. I got sent back.
That must have been a good feeling.
Deported. I got deported. Jordan, have you ever been deported? I got deported.
What's it like coming back?
Digitally deported.
Yeah. Was it everything you hoped it would be? The great return to ANZ Valorant?
Yeah,
what's the ecosystem like?
I loved taking 1/8 the rate that I was getting in NA. That was lots of fun for me. Rate aside, though, actually, rate does have a lot to do. I think a part of again, this is the money conversation has to come back in. It's the dirty conversation that people don't want to have, but it's the sometimes it literally is the bottom line. It's the reason why a bunch of us up until that point didn't actually end up doing Valorant. You probably would have jumped into Valorant at some point, but the opportunities weren't there and the rate wasn't right for you. And, you have to sometimes respect yourself and not do it. Other times, you're Pilsky, where you bite the bullet, you do it anyway, but you make a lot of internal effort to try and raise the rate to something a lot more applicable. And he's done a great job of doing that. So, well done. And so I basically get sent right back to Oceania. And they said region locking. They also said this is one of the reasons. They also said, and there's ping on the broadcast, which to be fair there is, but it's because we're using vMix and you can do things to fix that ping. I know because on the Overwatch League broadcast as well, there's ping, but they do some magic behind the scenes and they fucking fix it, and it sounds fine on the broadcast. So it is fixable if you want.
Yeah,
it is fixable if you want. Just saying, they use ping as an excuse, and this is the part that really bothered me. If that all of that, I'm like, fine, I accept it. I roll with the punches. It is what it is. However, this is the part that really bothered me. And I want to be very clear because I think the people listening to this, if you backtrack and do your homework enough, you can probably figure out who I'm talking about. I don't want to bring this person's name up because I'm not trying to. It's not about them. This is not about the person. It's about the system. The person involved made the correct decisions for what they need to do to advance their career, and I hold nothing against that individual person. In fact, I have had one-on-one conversations with this person who I'm not going to name to clarify these things so that they know this is not something I personally have against them. If I was in their position, I would make the same choices that they make to advance their career. I don't hold that against them at all. However, this is what happened. I get booted from NA, region locking, ping, and then this other caster from Australia is now doing NA-based broadcast, not necessarily VCT, but let's say official Riot-backed NA Valorant broadcasts. This person is now doing them. Not only is that happening, there's also talks about potentially getting them over to a LAN, flying them to Los Angeles, doing all this shit. I'm like, what the fuck is happening here? And this person, by the way, was super fresh, fairly new to casting. That's probably what'll give it away. And again, if this person sees this clip, we've had this conversation. nothing against you at all. You made all the right choices. If I were you, I would have done the same thing. So I hold nothing against you. You should feel no guilt about it either. You should feel zero guilt about it because I would have done the same thing. My problem is what the system did, where they essentially gave me X and Y reasons why they didn't want me on NA anymore, but then they rolled out the red carpet for somebody else from my country. And I'm sitting there like, so Riot, what the fuck happened to the region locking, huh? What the fuck happened to the ping? Ping just didn't disappear overnight, did it? You know? We don't have you haven't invented something that travels faster than the speed of light, so ping didn't suddenly disappear overnight. Did you remove region locking? Doesn't look like it, because I still can't do NA. Vince still can't do NA even, you know, because he's stuck in the EU and he can't cast with dust. So region locking still exists, ping still exists. So you've actually just lied to me, is what's going on here. You've given somebody else from my country an opportunity to do something that you removed from me based on reasons that now you've basically given exception for somebody else, who is a new caster, by the way. And I'm someone that's doing Overwatch League. And again, nothing to do with that caster individually. I hold nothing against him. I have to repeat this 3 times because I need to make it very clear where my intentions are, where my grievances are, and none of my grievances are with the person individual. It could be anybody. This could be literally anybody else. So individually, nothing to do with them. It's just how it was handled behind the scenes that really fucks with me.
Rules for thee and rules for me.
Rules for thee and not for me is rules for me and not for thee in this case.
Not for thee, yeah. That's definitely true. Well, I'm not sure there's much you can do about it, really. Sometimes this is that hooded Illuminati figure that you're talking about that maybe you just didn't impress, and they've decided, you know what?
You know what the worst part about that is? If at this point I don't know what the opportunities for me to do Valorant are anymore anyway. I've potentially shot myself in the foot from this, but I don't know. That quote unquote hooded figure, if they saw this, they'd probably think even worse of me, because now I've technically shit talked Riot publicly. Now I've technically done that. So, but I've not lied about anything. This is legitimately what I've been told. I've got the receipts too. So, yeah, I mean, this is just my genuine experience, and I'm putting my neck out on the table. I gain no benefit. I actually gain no benefit from saying this. I've actually just fucked myself for no reason. But what I'm trying to get at is I'm an extremely honest person who needs to tell the truth.
You know who you remind me of right now? You want to have a guess? Someone who said those very same words, very similar words at the very least.
Uber?
Yeah, Mitch Uber Leslie, chaotic neutral. That's what I would describe you as right now. You've got a mission.
I think I'm influenced by him a bit, because he went out to bat for me so hard that I feel like, you know, that is the something that requires unbelievable amounts of integrity to put your neck on the line for a principle or a value you believe in at significant cost to your own opportunities and your own bottom line. Right? Because he's gone on far bigger platforms to yell at Riot about things that I'm not even talking about. I'm just talking about me. He's, you know, and so he's, yeah, I don't know. But I respect it because it takes unbelievable amounts of integrity to basically cuck yourself to tell the truth.
Yep. Well, on a more positive topic, if we want to move on to...
I haven't answered why I haven't done Oceanic Valorant anymore, though. I don't know if we want to get into that. That's why I didn't do NA Valorant.
Sure. I mean,
the only reason I haven't done more Oceanic Valorant is I just don't think it just hasn't lined up. I think the opportunities mostly moved towards the main duos of Komodo, Conky, Pilsky, and Mac now. Mac and I used to be a duo back in the day, but you know, he's comfortably working with Pilsky now. It's not a comfortable place for me to just get in there unless we want to start shaking up the duos by inserting me. The last time we did that, I ended up casting with basically everything. I cast with Mac, Pilsky, and Conky.
Not ideal.
So it was a bit of a mixed bag, and I'm not against doing that. But it's the other thing is, like, I've also been away from Valorant for a minute now, and I would need a bit of time to get back in. And I don't mean this sounds like to people coming up and like up and coming casters, this sounds slightly pretentious, but I'm not saying that like the Oceanic Valorant broadcast is beneath me, but my level is that I would want to do Valorant at the franchise level because I think I'm a quality enough caster with enough in my resume that demands that level of broadcast. And I've done enough Valorant work in the past that I have shown, and I still think my CV is strong enough and my VODs are strong enough that, you know, I should be a candidate for that kind of stuff. And so if I can't do the franchising, doing tier 2 Valorant now, like now this is officially tier 2 Valorant because technically speaking, I've only done tier 1 Valorant because in AVCT in 2021, that was tier 1. There was no higher tier than that. So I've only done tier 1 Valorant. I've not done tier 2 Valorant unless you just want to call any, you know, non-major region tier 2, whatever. Grinding away at tier 2 Valorant is not something I'm interested in if that's not going to give me the opportunity to directly make it into the tier 1.
Here's what I want to ask you, and I feel like you've already answered it. So if you want to give it a one-word answer, that's fine. Would it be worth it for you to stay up to date, up to speed with Valorant for the amount of work you would get, the amount of income you would get from Oceanic Valorant? Would it be worth it to you as a caster to put in that effort?
Not ongoing. I would put on that effort. You want a one-word answer, and I'm going to give you 20 minutes of this. No, I'm just kidding.
It's fine. Standard.
It's not worth the ongoing effort because I don't think, like, realistically, maybe this is just my view, and this is maybe going to shock some up-and-coming casters. For you, it's different, but for me, I don't think grinding away doing Oceanic Valorant or any tier 2 Valorant is necessarily going to give me that. It's not going to move the needle that significantly enough to get me on a tier 1 franchise broadcast. And what I mean by that is my CV is strong enough that adding a couple more stages of VOT is not going to move the needle.
It's irrelevant.
I already know the people I need to know to get on the broadcast and need to get on. My casting duo partner for 2 years is Achilleos, who's going to be on that broadcast. Like, I mean, it's not. And I don't know that for a fact. He hasn't told me either. I'm just making an informed speculation that if you are one of the top broadcasters in the world, who is widely respected, who lives in Korea, who's already been doing your Valorant product for 2 years, you're gonna get on there. Everyone that's gonna be on that VC Pacific broadcast, not even that, the NA stuff. I'm still tight with Brendan Sideshow. EU, I still know Mitch. I still know Tombas is in my agency. Like, I'm connected. My agency has direct connections to Riot, directly to the exact people that would be able to get me onto that broadcast. I don't lack the contacts to get on the broadcast I would want to at a tier 1 level. I don't lack that. And I've seen throughout my career enough times where some dude just snipes a position. Right? Some guy from a different game, some dude who might not have even done this game before, boom, just snipes that position out from underneath you. It can just happen. And, you know, am I being pretentious to say that I could just snipe a position? And I'm not even some guy that has. I feel like I've paid my dues. I have paid my dues. I've done shitload of Valorant at a fairly high level as well. I've done enough Valorant. Okay, I didn't do Masters. Unlucky, I guess. That's my downside. But guess what? No one in this region has done Masters either. I've certainly done a lot more Valorant in terms of high level Valorant than most of the people in this region, outside of like Konki Komodo doing the thing in Ireland. That was pretty high level. I feel like I pay my dues. I legitimately don't believe that doing tier 2 Valorant will shift the needle for me in terms of helping me get on to a tier 1 broadcast. I would literally just be doing it for the money, but the rate is improved, but not attractive enough for me to warrant doing that only just for the money, if that makes sense.
I agree, and I think that's a good answer. So, that's Valorant done and dusted. Maybe AVRL's Valorant career is over as of the release of this show, but it seems like maybe it already is.
It's just up in the air. It's just up in the air. I never burn bridges unless Riot don't like the fact that I just talked about the region locking thing. And they, you know, I'm always open. Look, if Valorant knocked on the doors like here's a franchise opportunity, I would still seriously consider that and maybe take it. So it's not off the table for me. I'm just not currently doing it.
All right.
Valorant.
Well, let's move on to the rest of 2022. It was obviously quite a big year for you with regard to Overwatch League. I'm not sure specifically what there is to kind of touch on as far as individual events are concerned. So maybe that's something that if there is anything you want to bring up, you can sort of broach. But it just sort of seems like, you know, you've kind of finally made it, right? Everything's kind of getting rolling a little bit. You know, you're doing Overwatch League. You've done some finals in Overwatch League, so you've done some big stuff. You've worked more events in Overwatch this year or last year than pretty much what you ever have before. So
Yeah.
You've made it.
In a lot of ways, yeah, I think this is, I definitely, if you want to talk about career peak, 2022 would be it. And I think it's always good that every new year is a new peak. Obviously, I don't think that's sustainable forever in terms of you can't peak every year. At some point, you're going to plateau a little bit, but that's not the end of the world. But 2022 was a huge year. I went from part-time to full-time with the Overwatch League, which is another reason why it was difficult to do Valorant, because Overwatch just took up a bunch of time. Someone made a document out there. I can't remember who it was, or I can't remember what the exact numbers of the document, but they calculated, I think they might have just gone through every single game and figured out who casted it. But they worked out that I had casted the highest quantity of Overwatch matches last year in 2022 for the Overwatch League.
Do
it's
you
like
know,
covered for a lot of people too.
or have you seen? Because this is on the same tangent. AVRL collecting the Infinity Gauntlet of casters. Did you see that? I was on competitive Overwatch. I wondered if you'd seen it because I looked.
I don't think
I just googled AVRL Overwatch and it was one of the first things that came up. And it's like a picture of you with all of the co-casters you've had. I don't know who all of them are. Just look it up, like AVRL Overwatch, and go to image search or something, and it should be there. And it's like a picture of you with obviously with Achilleos and you know, with whoever, all the Overwatch League casters that you worked with. There's even a picture of you and me from the Overwatch Contenders broadcast.
I don't see it. Maybe I'm not using the right.
Maybe you haven't got safe search on because that was you know, anyway, whatever.
Okay.
What drew my attention was it was a picture of you and me on Overwatch Contenders from last year doing A sides or B sides or whatever it was we casted. And I was like, why is this picture on Reddit? And it's a picture of you and me, and then there's a picture of you and Luke, and then it's like another 7 or 8 pictures. I'll send you a link afterwards of all the people you casted with. So not only did you cast maybe whatever the most amount of Overwatch League games, but you've also racked up no shortage of co-casters as well.
Yes, I mean so what I've done is I went full monogamous married to Pixie, and to get into a bit of a hoe phase where I've just fucked everybody now. So if you would enjoy that analogy. No, I've definitely paired with quite a few different people by now. Last year was mostly because of scheduling. Achilleos was juggling Valorant. I basically wasn't. So his availability was a lot more limited, and there were some other casters sort of floating about, and I just kind of casted then I worked with Luke, who's new as well. That was another one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've seen this now. Yeah, I remember this now. This is cool. There's a lot of people. 9 images. Well, the last one's a podcast. We'll say 8 images. Anyway, I cast the most amount of games last year, and maybe with the most amount of people as well. That's correct.
Yeah. So big year. Now that more or less brings us up to date with everything that's happened in your career up to this point. The only other thing I wanted to maybe touch on, which I think could be a point of interest for people, is Overwatch 2's release. Does that have a big impact on things?
You mean personally?
For you, for Overwatch in general?
Well, that was probably the biggest challenge last year, because those that are aware of the time... Well, okay, I'll just say, like, for those that are not aware of the timeline, it goes like this. The actual game didn't release until October last year. The league started somewhere like late April, sometime during April. So obviously that's a long time before October. The league got access to and people associated, like players and staff and the casters, got access to the alpha around that. I think March we had access to the alpha, and then the public betas didn't start happening until a little bit further down the line after Overwatch League season started. So essentially, the game, while being extremely similar, is just different enough that from a casting and professional perspective, where teams and players are pushing the game to its absolute limits, that level of gameplay obviously changes significantly, and you have to make a lot of adjustments in terms of how the flow of the game works now, how the strategies are, how the teams interact, and how you should approach the broadcast. And also the speed of the game and all sorts of different things. Also changes to maps, new content, new heroes, whatever. It's a lot of learning there.
Mm.
And I remember approaching teams pre-season. This is after I've signed my contract. The other thing that was really insane was that I won't go in too much detail about this because some of it's kind of confidential, but I got given, after my 2021 season, I got given an initial offer, like a legitimate offer for the 2022 season quite earlier than a lot of casters. And I think that was to do with the fact that they were very keen to bring me back on for the next season, and I was one of the first people they wanted to lock in, which I felt really cool about. So in terms of their commitment to me, I thought that was really good. So I appreciated that from Blizzard. This is the other thing as well, you know, I've only had, especially in the Overwatch League periods, amazing experiences personally working with Blizzard. I got nothing bad to say about my personal experience working with Blizzard personnel on the Overwatch side, and the esports side. So, because I already know I'm being signed on, I officially sign on early in 2022. I got given access to the alpha. I start messaging teams for scrim access because I got to find out how the game works and what teams are doing now. I managed to get in with 19 out of 20 teams. Only one team turned me down. 19 teams let me in.
Don't. Unless you want to.
I actually have publicly. I'll say it was Shanghai Dragons. They didn't let me in, and it was specifically Coach Moon that turned me down. I respect him, but also SMH, buddy, SMH.
Yeah.
Thought we were tight. Apparently not.
Apparently not.
One team's team manager turned me down, but then their coaches let me in.
Well,
the team manager's like, oh, this is private, you know, we can't be sharing, blah, 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 blah. And the coach is like, oh yeah, just come in. Like, fuck it, just whatever. So it was like, that was one thing I thought was kind of funny. So yeah, going through all of that, playing the game in the alpha, getting wrecked by Overwatch League pros because the player pool number's quite low, so you're going up against pros all the time. And yeah, they're trying to basically deliver, because on day one, again, the audience doesn't care that it's a new, when they care it's a new game, but they're not going to give you any free passes immediately. I'm still expected to be an expert on day one. Doesn't matter that no one's played the game and seen the game. On day one, I already need to be an expert. And so that was my goal for day one broadcast. I come on, first game, and I'm like, right, this is Overwatch 2. This is how the game's going to work. This is what you're about to see and why you're going to see it. I already come in day one. I'm an expert on this game. Day one.
So this is perfect, actually, because now I want to stop talking about your experiences and your timeline and where you've been and where you've gone and what you've done. And I want to start talking about a couple of miscellaneous topics. There's not too many before we close the show out. But the first one that I had was your casting style and philosophy. Because I've always looked at you and I think you obviously cast a very different way to the way I cast. And I think you also cast a very different way.
Not even the same role.
Yeah, but you cast a very different way to a lot of casters, especially in the ANZ region. You're very analytical, you're very well informed, you're well reasoned, you know, and I think a lot of what you say is presented with conviction, because you never say words like "I think," "maybe this," "maybe that."
Well, that's not entirely true, but for the most part, yeah. For the most part, that is true.
I am making generalizations, but if you look at the way I cast, I very rarely make those very, this is what's happening, that is what's happening kind of comments. That's not really my role, to be fair, but you're always very direct, very sort of, what's the word? Convicted? That's probably not exactly what it is, but you get my point. So what is it that sort of influenced you to cast this way? I know you sort of mentioned you had a couple of people that you looked up to. You said Papa Smithy in particular, but I'm not necessarily talking about which casters, because we've kind of done that. I want to know, what is it about you as a person that makes you this way, that makes you cast like this?
Let's go all the way back to 2007, 2008. Let's rewind the clock a little bit. I'm a kid. I'm 17. I'm starting to learn about myself, the game. I'm now moving into IGL positions, team captain positions as well. Especially, I think You know, heading towards my, jeez, I was only like 20 at the time, but I was like, at the age of 20, when this was maybe my last year playing TF2 competitively. I was about to say professionally, wasn't a pro. Technically, no one was a pro back then. I consider myself to have figured out the game. I worked out the game. And what that means is I had a level of mastery in terms of pure knowledge. Mechanics, I still had some ways to go, but that's whatever. But on the knowledge side, I don't know that there was anything that could fly past me and go over my head knowledge-wise at that point in time. Anything there was to any possible strategy, anything that anyone could do in the game of TF2, I had it figured out. Basically, I looked at it from a chess perspective, and it's ironic because I don't actually get into chess. I'm not a very good chess player. I probably, if I dedicate a lot of time, I think I have the mindset for it because I think very far forward. I think many steps forward, and I'm thinking of a position of if I do this in the game, how does my opponent respond? What are the possible options? And then how do I counter those options? Here, I will do this. My opponents can react in A, B, or C fashion, and I have a specific counter for all three of the different ways they can react. That's how I approach IGL and how I approach in-game comms and structure and strategy in the games. And you understand that the super high level of that is that now you can also manipulate what your opponents do. This is going somewhere. Sorry, but one of my as any millennial who was born in the early 90s and even some of the later 90s, one of the popular card games and TV shows at the time was Yu-Gi-Oh! And everyone just kind of got into incidentally. There is and again, stay with me, I'm going somewhere. There is one specific card that I always remember that I reference back to as a bit of a philosophy in how I think, and it's called Painful Choice. And what essentially this card does is I pick 5 cards, any 5 cards from, it's this banned card by the way because it's too strong. I pick any 5 cards from my deck,
I remember
and
this
you pick 1 card that I will keep and 4 cards that I will discard. Now that potentially sounds bad. It's like, well, you only get to keep 1 out of 5 cards. You lose 4 cards, potentially 4 cards you want, because your opponent's never going to pick the best card. If I give you 5 options, you're going to make sure the best out of those 5 options I don't get. I get the worst one is what you're trying to do if you're my opponent. So the way I play that is, well, I'm just going to pick 5 things that are all really good, 5 things that are equally good. You don't want me to have any of them, but I have to have one of them. Now you pick 1 and I get 1 good thing, I lose 4 good things. The mathematics doesn't sound good. Why would I lose 4 good things to get 1 good thing? And here's where the philosophy comes in. Is at the end of the day, I still have the choice of what I present to you. The problem for you as my opponent is that you still do not want any of those options. I will pick 5 of my best options. I may lose 4, but the fact that I even get 1 out of those 5 is a problem for you, my opponent. It's a problem for you because you don't want me to have any of them. The thing, it's not about what I lose. I might lose 4, but what I gain in 1 is worth that loss because you, as my opponent, do not want me to even have that 1. You don't want me to have it. So how does Painful Choice play into my philosophy for how like IGL strategy works? Is I will basically present a bunch of options through my shot calling and what my team does in game, where you as the opponent, if you're the opposing shot caller, you must respond in certain ways. If I make, I'm not going to get into specific. This is a very philosophical discussion, very theory-based discussion. I'll present to you 3 options, let's say, or even 5. We want to keep the card analogy there. You will choose one of those options in terms of how you will respond. It doesn't matter what you choose. I don't care what you choose. Whatever you've chosen, I have the counter prepared. I know what all your possible answers are, and I know what my answers to your answers are going to be. So I win at the end of the day. Your choice is irrelevant to me. Whatever your choice is, I've already worked it out. I'm already ahead of you by another step. So this is how that philosophy works in terms of thinking ahead. We didn't get to talk about this game a lot, but this applies a lot because we're talking about a little bit of card games here. This applies a lot to what I discovered through Hearthstone. I was a pretty reasonable Hearthstone player, but I didn't grind enough to get Legend. I got rank 3. I think that's the highest I got, which is not like the Legend rankings. It was just like the whatever. If you played Hearthstone, you know. And I was I would say I was pretty good at Hearthstone in my time. I was good in the tournament aspect. I wouldn't say I was like a good ranked grinder because that's more about quantity of games. But in the individual quality of games and individual matchups, I really knew what I was doing because I knew every single out my opponent had. I knew every single option they had. I knew all of my options, my odds, everything. I knew that game inside and out, backwards and forwards in certain metas. Obviously, I didn't play the entire time. I quit at some stage. And that game taught a lot to me about value. What is value exchange in the gaming sense, right? In a game like Hearthstone or in like TCGs, like card games like that, where you battle, if I trade one card for your one card, we both use one card and they trade it equally, it's an even exchange of value. If I, with my one card, get rid of two of your cards, that's an uneven exchange of value in my favor. Now you play resource into that as well. If I trade one card for your one card, but my one card is worth less resource-wise than yours, I gain on value, you lose on value. This is important moving forward to other games like Overwatch eventually, where there is economy in play. There's ultimate economy. There's stuff like this. There's positioning as well in terms of gain and loss, because value can be quantified in multiple different ways in terms of the literal economy, in terms your resources with the ultimates. But there's also like advantages and disadvantages in terms of resource with your cooldowns that are not ultimate based, and your positioning on the map, what you're willing to give up, what you're willing to concede and then gain, etc. All that kind of stuff. So the Hearthstone knowledge and the card game knowledge really helped me with that in terms of understanding value exchange and who's coming out ahead in terms of small ways. And then strategically, it's about understanding how you gain, how you push small advantages and stay ahead. Kind of like in a League of Legends game where, okay, you might get first blooded, but you can still win the entire match at the end of the day. But if you're a really good team and you get the first blood, you get the first plate, the first tower, whatever, and you know how to keep your advantage forward, you never lose that advantage, then you get the drag and then you snowball into this, you then just win a very clean game. But the cleanest game of League of Legends possible is played when a team basically starts, they gain an advantage somehow and they never lose it because they make all the correct decisions to never lose that advantage. And any sort of trade that happens, you might lose a play, but you still come out positive in the trade because you traded for a different objective somewhere else in the map. Like, these things are relevant in terms of how I think about strategy. So, we haven't talked about this either, but I had a brief stint in a coaching career, 3 months with the Direwolves. I coached before that in Overwatch, but it wasn't like serious. I didn't coach for an actual org. I didn't have a contract or a salary with Direwolves. I actually had a contract, I actually had a salary, and I actually worked day in and day out with my players and was very close to them. So, I apply a lot of my learnings into coaching, which then reapplies into my casting as well. So I approach casting, and we're finally arriving here back at casting. I know that was a long journey. Thank you for sticking with me for that. We're finally right back at casting, and it was better than 20. And what it comes down to is the fact that my background comes from more of either an IGL or a coaching perspective. If I am this team, what am I trying to do? If I'm either the shot caller or the coach of this team, what needs to happen? What am I trying to tell my team? What am I trying to figure out? What do I think the other team is doing? What do they need to be doing? What do I need to be doing in response? All of this stuff from my history, my IGL history, my coaching history, all coalesces into my analytical casting style. I'm also an extremely logical person. Personality test, I come out as INTP, which is like the most hardcore in terms of logic mindsets you can get as far as personalities go. I don't know. Some people don't buy into Myers-Briggs a lot, but it's just a fun little thing. I'm not taking it massively seriously. You're looking at it right now. It's literally nicknamed the Logician. Basically, it's just everything. My entire viewpoint of life and everything goes through the most logical lens possible. It has to logically check out, or it doesn't function for me at all. And that's where my analytical sort of background comes in, and why I think the way I do. And that's why also I have high levels of conviction. To have high levels of conviction, you could fake it, but I think most people could see through that. The reason why I have it and I just roll with it is because when I say something with high conviction, I actually know what the fuck I'm talking about. Like, I'm not 99%, I'm 100% on that. Like, what I've said, I back it 100%. And if we sat there and someone questioned me on it, I could show evidence. I show you my workings, motherfucker. I could show you how I got to that point, and all the evidence supplied and all these kind of things. So, like, there's no point I can't back anything I say on a broadcast. There's nothing there that I can't back up. I can back up all of it 100%. Don't don't have time to explain too much on a broadcast. You got to roll with it, but you know, yeah, everything and that's the kind of brand I built for myself as well. Is like if you listen to me on a broadcast, I'm legitimately an expert, not faking it. I actually know what I'm talking about, and I can explain everything into very fine detail, into very nitty gritty detail. If you want me to, I could do that. So yeah, everything is evidence based, everything is logic based, and a lot of it's. I think to be a really good analyst / colorcaster, but analyst, it's not about just being able to do hindsight analysis or, well, here's what happened, and let me work backwards to find out how that happened. It's also about working forwards. You need to be able to predict things based on evidence to figure out what's about to happen several steps ahead. That's when you're actually good. So I think that's the difference between a good colorcaster and a less good one.
All right. Well, that answers that question. Moving on. Content creation. Why haven't you gone harder into it? Because I know you dabble, as you mentioned. You did a bit of streaming. You've got your own YouTube channel. Maybe I'll put a link in. I think it's one of the recommended channels actually on my channel, just by the way. So you're welcome for that one.
Old videos there.
Yeah, and you've got a podcast as well, Tactical Crouch or something that I see you popping up on every now and then.
Actually, not on there anymore, but that's a different story.
All right, well, that aside, you are involved in content, but you've never really like gone all in on it, I don't think. So why is that? Is it just because you've got too much other work, like with casting? It's something that I struggle with as well.
I did actually go all in. That 1 month where I thought I had nothing before I got Overwatch League and Contenders Career back, I went all in on it for a whole month. And I would say that I had some reasonable results from there. But as with anything, if you don't keep it up, it goes away. So here's my relationship with content. I'm going to say some triggering stuff. I want to do more content. I do. That's triggering.
So does everyone, mate.
Triggers me. However, I am also a bit of a perfectionist to a fault, which means that I don't want to do half-baked stuff, and I don't want to just like do things for the sake of doing them. Like I'm an all-in kind of guy. I got to go all in. You know, when I go all in, I don't mean it from a time factor. I mean that from like an effort factor and like an attention factor, focus, clarity, and quality of ideas, right? So I have a real problem, personal problem, with just turning on a stream for the sake of turning on a stream. Oh, am I playing some League of Legends today? Just turn on the stream. I don't have a plan. I don't really am I trying to reach a goal. I'm just doing it to do it. Not too sure about that. I'm if I was to do content properly, here's what I would actually do. I would focus actually on YouTube for me, and I would do very specific YouTube content with actual goals behind it in terms of what I'm trying to, what message am I trying to spread? Why am I spreading that message? And who's my audience or what I'm trying to tell them? Streaming is something I want to do when I just want to play games and interact with the audience, but like otherwise, streaming is extremely time consuming. Unless you're a big streamer, the time, effort, to result success ratio, tangible result ratio is pretty bad. So like you can put in 6 hours of time into streaming, and what you get out of that 6 hours is not like
6 hours worth of effort.
Nah, it's really not. Like you're losing time and money unless you've got literally nothing else. If you've got something better to do, that's a bad way to spend your time.
Yep.
Now, this is where the conversation of people like up and coming streamers like, well, you got to stream to get there. You can't just, obviously, if you don't have the big audience, it's not worth it. But how do you get the big audience? Well, you got to get there by grinding a stream. Yes and no. You know, there's a lot of people that just hard grind a stream and never get anywhere. I think there's smarter ways to do that through leveraging other pieces of content through YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, whatever. When you build a brand, you build content, you actually build on all platforms at the same time, is my belief.
I think you and I have sort of come to some very similar conclusions when it comes to content, because I don't see streaming as being a valuable direction for someone like me, and obviously for you as well, because it's very hard to maintain that with the lifestyle that we lead, doing shows here and there and who knows when, and sometimes at the drop of a hat, and having a regular schedule is obviously very difficult when it comes to streaming. And I don't really see the value in it when I could be, for example, like today, spending 3 hours talking to you and doing a show
About to be
like
4?
this. Yeah, very close to 4. Where the way I look at my channel, my YouTube, is this is a way for me to tell the stories of Asia Pacific esports, and I think it's something that I can pick up and put down as I need. I don't have to have a consistent schedule with it. Obviously, you need to sort of be releasing videos every now and then to sort of have some semblance of consistency, but it's not as if I have to be sitting here at now it's 7 p.m. on a Wednesday afternoon streaming every Wednesday at 7 p.m. in the afternoon. I can balance this around my partner's time. I can balance this around my time. I can do a video at Monday, 12 o'clock at midday, release it on Friday, which is when these are all going to release, probably Friday at 5 p.m. But I don't have to be here on Friday at 5 p.m., which is when I would have to be streaming or something like that to be hitting the market that I need to be hitting. So I think it all sort of flows together. It fits a little bit of a better balance to the lifestyle as well.
It's just also, I mean, I said it's time consuming, but there's a mental toll in terms of how exhausted you are from, I don't know, like if you've done many big streaming stints, but I've tried streaming 40 hours a week, literally full-time job, maybe not 40, maybe closer to 35 or 30, 35. And it is exhausting because you're not just sitting, if you're really trying. And at the time, I actually think I did well because, say, going back to like how well you do as a streamer, I actually did pretty well as a streamer. I was averaging 150 views. I'll say it. My sub count peaked at 400. That's pretty reasonable. I think I'm proud of that.
It's quite good. Not quite livable, but close to it.
No, that's not a full-time job, but like that's a really decent number for someone that's, on the up and up. Averaging 150 concurrent and like streaming 5 days of the week and having a lot of chat interaction and talking all the time. But you'll always have to be this feeling of being on. You're
being on a broadcast.
In some ways, but like you're always, your mind is always on. You're not just sitting there turning your brain off playing games. You're doing so much. You have to keep up with chat. You're talking to people. You're thinking about stuff. You're going through things. And for me as well, my stream was mostly watching back games and analyzing them. And that's fine. But here's the other problem I had was like, I didn't want that to be my content and what my brand was all about. Even though it's like, well, what else is your brand going to be about? You're the analyst, you're the color caster, you're the brain guy. Of course, this is why people come to watch you. Like, what the fuck? What, are you stupid? Like, yes, that is why people come to watch me. But can I do that 35 hours a week? Do you know what I mean? Like, eventually I'm just gonna. It's just tiring. I'm gonna run out of games to watch, and it's just not interesting to me. And I'd rather be doing other things. So every time I turned on the stream and did that, I would rather like, man, I just want to play some random game. Not even like playing ranked. Because the other thing is like, I think it's fairly monotonous to just grind out, unless you like actually enjoy playing ranked and grinding out ranked and reaching a high rank. Going through that experience is just mind numbing. And it's not for me. I'm not the kind of guy that can sit there playing ranked day in, day out, game in, game out, requeuing, and it's just not fun for me. I can't do that either. So I had to take a break and refigure out like, what is my brand? What is my stream? Because I can't just sit here playing ranked, and I can't just sit here analyzing games all day. If I was to seriously get back into streaming now, as dumb as it sounds, I'd probably do IRL. I just do me. I just do me, one of those like, IRL type streamers. I'm not saying I'd be like Hassan and all that. Maybe I would just look at content or react. I don't know. Like, I would just be me and not, because that would be the most fun for me. Everything else feels like work. That would just be the most fun for me, is just to do IRL. But that's also the most competitive category. And talking about like stuff like YouTube as well. Like, I don't even know that I want to do gaming based stuff. I'll do some gaming, but if I was to really get into YouTube, and maybe I do have some plans for that. Again, they're just not well set in stone enough for me to really dive into. I want to potentially do non-gaming content. I want to do more like life stuff when I have my life more put together, which is an ongoing sort of thing in my life. And in 2023, I want to put my life in the best place it's ever been. I think to have a life worth watching and for people to look at, you have to have a life worth looking at. So there's a lot of work behind the scenes I have to do to get in that position. So that's the content that I'd rather be doing than just grinding out game stuff for me.
So if you'd like to see AVRL release his cooking YouTube channel, leave a comment below and let him know. That's what we want to see. AVRL's IRL cooking. Basically,
let him cook.
Open up your nearest food delivery app and order food channel, knowing AVRL. That's how he cooks. Look, beyond that, obviously, I think for you, you're in a pretty unique position in that I think if you did actually put effort into making that kind of content for YouTube that you've been making on stream, I think it's almost funny, right? Where you say like, oh, the main priority on my stream was gameplay analysis. I almost think if you did one video on YouTube of gameplay analysis, that might even perform better than you doing a whole stream.
Well, YouTube's just better because it's evergreen content that lasts forever, and people can go back. Your VODs on Twitch get deleted eventually unless you save them, but even then, it's like people don't go to Twitch to watch VODs. And my VOD viewership has been pretty reasonable. I am often surprised by how many people have watched my VODs, and I actually one time I had to delete a VOD because I doxed myself. And I had to delete that VOD. And I actually got a message from someone who's like, I noticed you deleted your VOD. Like, how am I supposed to? You can't be deleting it. Someone got annoyed. A viewer got annoyed that I deleted my VODs. And I was like, man, do people really care about my VOD? I thought it was like, oh, no one's going to give a fuck. Like, who really watches my VODs? But someone was like really upset that I deleted my VOD because they wanted to watch my VOD. So apparently people like watching my VODs. I don't know.
There you go. All right. Well, moving on from the content creation topic, this is one I think is kind of close to my heart and maybe, not super relevant to people outside of Australia, but I've spoken a few times with other talent from this region, and they've often brought up the talent agency discussion. They say, is it worth getting a talent agency? And I've always said, well, I don't really know what a talent agency has to offer for an ANZ caster, but you're very uniquely positioned in that you do have a talent agency. And you are obviously on some global broadcasts, but what would you say to other talent within our region that are looking at potentially broaching an international talent agency?
First of all, you're not going to get on one unless you are valuable enough that the agency can regularly book you and on relevant stuff as well. What I can tell you about these large international talent agencies that deal with tier 1 talent, and I'm not by myself here necessarily, but just look across the board, you know who the tier 1 talent is. I don't have to name them. These are the talent agencies want people that are going to get regularly booked on good shit that pays well. There's a level of, again, I don't want to sound pretentious, but there's a little prestige around the fact that you don't want your roster of dead weights on it. Like if you're a talent agency, you don't have a bunch of dead weights on there. You want to look like a higher value agency that represents good people, that represents talented people. So you have to think about, first step is, don't think about it from like, what can I get out of the agency? First, you have to answer, what does the agency get out of you? Because if you can't answer that, then you're not going to get on. So don't even bother thinking about getting on an agency if you can't simply answer, what does the agency get out of you? Now, how did I get onto an agency? First of all, I did have some contacts of other casters and talent that I knew quite well on a personal level that were already on some agencies. Across both of them, a couple of the different agencies. That is, I had some close friends that are already on them, so I asked them about it. It's like, hey, what is it like? Is it been good for you? Can you introduce me? Who are the people I need to talk to? Right. So I got my ends quite easily that way. But even then, that's not good enough. Even if you had that, again, you have to be able to offer them something. If I didn't have something to offer, they wouldn't pick me up. What I had to offer was going from 2020 to 2021. My current agent, the guy who picked me up, he knew I was a prime candidate to get into Overwatch League for 2021. He knew before I knew. I mean, I would like to assume, I would like to believe that I'm a prime candidate, that I was next on the list. But this guy actually knew because he's in deep. These people are in deep. So because he knew that my likelihood of getting on Overwatch League was extremely high, he booked me because he's like, well, I know this guy's a done deal. I know this guy's a guarantee for me. And Overwatch League is a tier 1 broadcast that the agency's going to get a good cut out of. That's what they're looking. Think about the bottom line. It comes down to the bottom line. What are they going to get out of you? Sorry, but if you're doing $200 broadcasts in AU, you're not going to get looked at. Like my agent regularly doesn't want me to look at any broadcast even under 800, and he's disappointed me if I even consider taking a broadcast under that amount, because it's bad on the prestige of the agency. Like, because the agency only wants to represent the best talent. And if you're out here taking fucking shit gigs, like you're just you're that's a stain on the agency. It's bad. There's if you even if you're one of the best broadcasters in AU, someone on your level, Jordan, you would have to be bookable for international stuff for the agency to make sense on both sides. Because you don't need an agency to do what you're currently doing. You don't need an agency to get on ANZ Champs. You're already on ANZ Champs. You would lose money by getting an agency, because they suddenly take a cut out of something you're getting 100% out of. Why would you lose money to get something? You get an agency to get on stuff you don't have access to. If I want to get onto Valorant franchise stuff, I go through my agency, because they talk directly to not people down the chain, the guy at the top of the chain, the exact person at the top of the chain that you require to talk to get on that broadcast. Right, they have those contacts. The people on the people that are my agency mates, that are other casters in my agency, are people who've done masters and champions for Valorant. People that do Overwatch League, people that do Call of Duty League, people that do literally the top broadcast available. So they have the contacts to all the talent managers and all the hiring personnel within those companies, within those TOs, or those developers, or those publishers, to get on those broadcasts. Way more than I do. So that's what an agency actually does for you. But yeah, unless you have something to offer internationally in terms of your ability to get international work, you're probably not going to get onto an agency, because you don't have enough to offer. Now, the question that also always comes up is like, well, what if I do think I have something? What if how am I supposed to get onto an international gig if I don't have? It's a catch-22, right? How am I supposed to get an international gig if I don't have an agency representing me to get into those conversations? They don't want me because I'm not in those conversations. But how do I, it is a catch-22. But that comes back to like my pathway, which was I was a big enough deal in tier 2 that I was high enough on a listed break into tier 1 that it was worthwhile for an agency to take a risk on me. That was what it came down to.
Very interesting stuff. All right, well, I have one or two more things to touch on before we close it out. Being a professional caster in 2023, has it gotten easier as the years have gone on, being an esports caster, do you think? Just in general.
For me, or for other people?
In general.
Other people, no. I want to say other people, I mean like tier 2 or below. Absolutely not. Yes, actually, yes and no. It is both simultaneously easier to go up the ranks and exceptionally harder to move up the ranks. For guys like me that are already there and have kind of built out a niche, as long as my esports keeps going and I keep getting offers, I'm fine. I'm chilling. But even guys like me, if you look at what just happened at LCS, you can't get comfortable. You can never get too comfortable, which I think is the biggest thing that people don't realize about casting. Is you get all these starry-eyed youngins coming through casting tier 3, tier 2s like, I want to be a full-time professional esports broadcaster, and they think once they get to the end of the rainbow there's a shiny pot of gold. What they don't realize is you get to the end of the rainbow and you're walking on thin ice. It's like the end of the rainbow is thin ice, and you could easily fall through at any point. Sometimes not even of your own fault. You could say a couple of wrong things and then people don't like you anymore. You could piss off the people you're working with. Your esports, your broadcast budget can get slashed. The broadcast could literally just get deleted and go away. So many things can happen and maybe it moves to a different TO and now they don't want to hire you because they have their own people. So many things can screw you over. And people think once you make it, I can relax now. It's like I feel as on edge now as I did pre-Overwatch League, but for slightly different reasons, if that makes sense, because the things you worry about at this level are slightly different things you worry about at other levels, but the worrying, sadly, I hate to break it to you, doesn't really stop. You just got different problems. You're frying bigger game, but you got bigger problems. Is more money, more problems kind of deal. I said this on the panel podcast as well, is you just have different problems. And the problems don't really ever stop. So there's way more casters coming up than ever before. So in a lot of senses, unless you have something, either a quality or you're a demographic that the broadcast is specifically looking for, if you're that, then your pathway to the top is very easy. If you're not that, your pathway to the top is exceptionally hard.
And that's an interesting segue as well into the next one that I wanted to talk about. You said the worries don't stop, no matter how far you go. And this is something that maybe you struggled with a little bit in 2022. You mentioned to me that, you know, you've been grinding away, you've been doing all this work, you finally got to where you want to get, and then you're like, now what? So that's on your mind going into 2023. What is it like to have achieved basically your, I don't want to say life goal necessarily, but certainly your last few years goal, and then you wonder, where do I go from here?
Let me put it like this: if you ever think you've achieved your life goal, then you've got nothing left to live for, which is a really extreme thing to say. I don't mean like you don't nothing left to live for, but I mean like if you've achieved your life goal, then you literally have nothing left. Like what is your existence? I guess you just do what you do. I don't know. Like if you're a very goal driven oriented person like me, the kind of situation I ended up in was I got Overwatch League, something I worked 5+ years for. Great. Everything I wanted. However, I didn't have a goal anymore. I didn't have anything left to it. I feel like I didn't. Okay, you could say like, oh, your next goal could be or cast a final, or cast this event, or cast the grand finals, whatever. I did do a world final. I did the mid-season invitational final. So in a way, I've done a world final already. I haven't done it on LAN, and I haven't done it in a stadium. Sure, I could do that. I could probably make more money than I'm making. You know, maybe I could get a better salary. That caps out at some stage. I know what the highest salaries that have been paid to esports broadcast talent have been, so I know where the upper limit is. And that, by the way, that peaks so high. You're like, when you look at the bell curve, you're literally looking at the tippy top end. You look at the top of the pin needle. So, and if I'm even lucky enough to get there, I know what the peak is in terms of what I could possibly make. And for some people, that's great. That's fine. It's good money, and you'll be happy. But for other people like me, I'm just like, it's also a very personal experience for me. Where like I always want more, not because I'm greedy, but because I need another carrot on the stick. I need something else to achieve. I need something to wake me up in the morning and motivate me and get me moving. Otherwise, for me personally, I'm not saying there's other people experiences, but for me, I'm just dead in the water. I feel like I'm floundering. I feel like I'm just like existing. I just exist. So while last year was one of the best years for me career-wise, mentally, I wasn't that happy last year. I wasn't particularly happy because I felt like I lost a lot of purpose. It sounds ungrateful. I sound super ungrateful. I realize that. But I'm not ungrateful for my career. I've worked super hard for that. You know, I feel like I got what I deserve because I worked for it. But I need more to work towards. I need more things to try and achieve and do. Because that's just my personality and that's how I roll.
All right. Final thing then. Your outlook on the industry. We've been hearing,
I
suppose, lately about recession, esports is dying, Overwatch is dead, blah, 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 X is dead, Y is dead, this sucks, life sucks, gaming sucks, microtransactions, blah, blah, blah. All this negative terminology, whatever you want to put it, whatever you want to say, wherever you want to put it. But where do you think things are going in 2023 and maybe beyond?
You want a fun fact?
What's your thoughts?
I haven't played a game. When I say a game, I mean boot up the game and play it in any sort of fashion. Going to a practice range, nothing. I have not booted up and played a game, even launched a game for a full month now. A full month. I've not even booted up a game, nor have I thought about booting up a game, for that matter. And I'm not saying that as a critique against the gaming industry. I've just been doing other things. I've been like focusing on other things. I mean, I'm putting my mind elsewhere. Like I've suddenly. It's not that like I dislike games now. I will still always be a gamer, but like I just haven't felt the need to mindlessly boot up a game for the sake of playing it. Does that mean I have less enjoyment? I don't really know what it is. I think I just have. There's other things that are piquing my interest that I really am. That's grasping me. I think as an entertainment, as an industry though, because we were talking about the industry. There's also no new exciting games to play, and I think a lot of people like that novelty right now. I feel that as well. Like there's nothing new on the horizon that's coming immediately that I'm chomping at the bit to get into. that hasn't happened yet. I think a lot of people, I think Shroud at one point says like, man, I just don't have anything fun I want to play right now. He doesn't want to play anything. Industry, it's a little weird place. My biggest critique of the industry has always been and will always continue to be until this gets fixed, if it can get fixed, is monetization. How do you monetize esports? Because I will always compare it to traditional sports, where in traditional sports it's very clear how it gets monetized. Each individual fan has an expected amount of money they pay for their fandom for sports every single year, and that, I don't know what that number is, but it can be quantified. And in the, you know, the big wigs, the financial people, they have quantified that. So when you talk about traditional sports, you look at merch sales, ticket sales, pay-per-view buys, what else? Just about anything else that can be monetized, you do. F&B at events, I don't know, all this kind of stuff. Some of that is just not really available for esports because our audience is different and they're used to something else, and it's very difficult to dive in. And I've talked about this before. I think I said this on the panel, but you cannot pay-per-view anymore. You cannot, I don't even think you can really even attempt to pay-per-view esports audiences because they're just so anti that. Everyone just wants everything for free. And while that's great for the consumer, it fucks the industry. And it'll also in the long run, maybe even fuck the consumer too, because you have a huge monetization problem in esports where the average spend of an esports viewer is so much astronomically lower than the average spend of a traditional sports viewer. And a lot of that comes from the fact that, so two parts. One is that they're less willing to spend in esports, and two, and that's maybe because they're younger and maybe they have less expendable income. Two is because monetization problems like no pay-per-view, and
broadcast rights, definitely
tickets, broadcast rights, humongous. There's no broadcast rights deals. There's no really any ticket sales because there's not that many live events. There's some live events, but you're talking about traditional sports where every single game is played home and away live in a huge stadium where you can sell at the stadium. It's possible, right? You just don't have that. And those tickets, by the way, go for a lot of money. You know, what's ringside? How much money to go to a boxing match? Ringside is 5 figures. You want to go to F1? You want to go to an F1 race? You know, $100 for an entry level ticket on a cheap stand. You want anything better than that? It's going to cost you thousands. You know, forget about a corporate box. It's all these. You don't even get to start that conversation in esports. It's not even possible. And you look at those F1 races. The stands are full. They are packed to the rafters. Everyone's dying to go. You have to get an F1 ticket in the, you know, on the open market because some of them are just sold out. It's just gone. Unless it's like a League of Legends World Final, that's the only event that I know personally where like the tickets are actually fairly expensive, hard to get, and it sells out quickly. But that's the literal league. That's like the Super Bowl. Right? Obviously, the Super Bowl is going to sell out, but you know we're talking about regular games, traditional sports that they can sell out a lot of. So when people, this is my gripe as well with some of the fan base in terms of the naivety, because they want to have their cake and eat it too, which means they want to view esports for free. They don't want to pay for shit. That's fine, cool. That's all free. You don't pay for anything. But then they have the goal to complain about certain sponsors and certain investment that comes on in. So let me get this straight. You both don't want to pay for the product you're consuming for free. And because people like you don't want to pay, these esports and these broadcasts aren't making enough money. They have to source income and revenue from elsewhere. You are now also unhappy with where that revenue is coming from. You are now policing that as well. What the fuck do you want? Sorry, but this shit doesn't work for free. Do they think you just like it's that you turn on the tap and the water just flows? This is a business. Like if you're not going to pay for it, somebody does have to pay for it. You don't get to both not pay for it and then complain about who is paying for it. You don't get to play that game. That's my position on that. So monetization is I think this is why like VC money for teams is starting to run dry. Teams are cutting back because VCs they're not getting the return on esports. There was a huge esports boom like four years, close to like 6-7 years ago, I would say.
I think 2016, 2017, 2018.
Yeah, that was the biggest boom. You saw millions of dollars of VC. That VC money is drying the fuck up because those VCs are coming back in 2023 like, yo, I haven't got a return yet, and the trend's moving downwards. This is not all that's worked out to be. And those teams, how much can you make on merch sales? Like at the end of the day, you can't make enough in merch sales to get all your money back. And even if you're making a lot in merch, you're still an esports team that does merch on the side rather than an actual merch brand that has esports on the side. It's a very different conversation. And also merch is just heavily competitive. Merch and apparel is one of the most competitive industries you could possibly get into. So there's just so few ways to money. Also, salaries are massively inflated. This is why salaries have been cut back as well. Players are going to get triggered by this. Players should not be on $1 million salaries, not even close, because those players typically, almost 100% of the time, are not bringing in $1 million worth of value or anywhere close to whatever that number is worth of value back to the org who's paying them a salary. Even if you're getting paid 200K, 300K, whatever, 500K, you're not bringing that money back in value back to the team. The team is literally losing money on these player salaries because they're trying to win, because they're hoping if they win, they'll be more popular, they'll sell more merch, they'll get more views on the YouTube, even though it's not enough either. Yeah, it's just, I'm sorry to make it all bleak and shit, but like until monetization for esports is actually solved or it actually improves, it's future. I don't think esports is going to die, but I don't think it's going to become the giant that everyone wants it to become, predicts it'll become, hopes it'll become. It's not going to get there. It's not going to get to UFC. We always compare ourselves to UFC. I compare esports to UFC. It's not going to get to UFC because UFC actually monetizes their audience because they have pay-per-view.
Certainly not for the next few years. I think it's a long-term goal, really, in my mind. Certainly something that can happen, but I'm not sure it'll be in our working lifetime, put it that way. It may be when we have kids or they have kids and esports is really sort of ingrained in life at that point. But that might be a bit of a pipe dream. Anyway, I think that's a good point to stop this, to finish this off and say goodbye. Is there anything you want to say before we go?
Yeah, here's one question you should ask me. Should people get into esports in 2023? Right?
Maybe that's a whole different podcast discussion. Maybe we can do a whole different
I'll keep it extremely short. I would say currently, if you're already here, whatever. But if you're thinking like now is a great time to jump into esports in any capacity, unless you're a player and you're young and you have time to burn, I don't know that it's the best choice to make. Certainly as far as casting goes, it's more saturated than ever. The competition is higher than ever. And guess what? There's not more broadcast. There's still only the same amount of broadcasts with way higher saturation and the amount of talent trying to come in. So unless you think you have the potential or you are exceptional, it's going to be an unbelievably tough road and you probably shouldn't attempt it. If I was to redo esports in 2023, even with the knowledge I have, I don't know that I would. Even equipped with the knowledge I currently have to redo it from again. It's just too competitive. And there's too many. I've named multiple Deus Ex Machina moments. Too much luck required in some regards as well, even though luck is opportunity meets preparation. You can only be so prepared and there can only be so many opportunities that everyone's fighting for. But that also is a statement that I use to weed out people that aren't taking it seriously. But even some people that take it seriously, they're not going to make it. And that's just a sad reality. I mean, you have to come to terms with that even if you're trying to go full-time, even if you are full-time and you really are trying to make it, this is all you have and all you're trying to do, you have to come to terms with the reality that it still might not work out. And if that reality happens, you have to have an answer. That's all I'll say on that.
Hi there. If you made it this far and you're enjoying the content, please make sure you subscribe. Or if you really want to go the extra mile, you can support me on buymeacoffee.com/elfishguy. There's a link in the bio.